Greetings. How is everyone today? Packed house. My name is DJ Sprey. I work for Dell Technologies now, and I am in the principal engineer in the SDN and Open Networking product group. So the good news is this is one of the last presentations of the day, and the good news is this is have a little fun with this one. And so I'm going to talk about some of the solutions that we have in order to help customers deploy and build their OpenStack infrastructures with Dell. So a little bit about our open networking. I'm going to talk briefly about that, just sort of some level set, because it is a key component to everything we do. Open networking within Dell is based on disaggregation. I'm not sure if anyone was in the previous session. But the beauty of disaggregation is it allows innovation at every layer. It allows competition at every layer. It allows customers choice and flexibility to build whatever it is that they want to build. Not every customer is exactly the same. So there's three pillars. There's separation of the control plane and the data plane. So this is where intelligence live in some central compute, and the network is essentially just dumb packet processors. So things for networking folks who may be in the room, those are things like OpenFlow. Then there's network overlay. So those of you familiar with things like VMware NSX or Metacora, Plum Grid, Contrail, Nuage, all those sorts of techniques where the physical network and the virtual network are decoupled, we also have solutions in that area there. And then we have disaggregation within the operating system. So this is quite a departure. This is where Dell is the leading innovator in this space, where in previous, networking has been done prior to us taking up this open networking initiative, is you would go and buy your networking gear from one vendor, and you'd only want that one operating system. For instance, you'd go to Cisco, you get Cisco iOS, Junos, you get Juno, so on and so forth. We wanted this to look more like the compute industry, where you have a basic building block, and customers were free to choose the operating systems that they wanted to run on their hardware. So unlocking that capability. So just some examples, I've already touched on some of them, why you want to disaggregate. So obviously we build things on merchant silicon, so there is certainly a CapEx savings there. And competitions at multiple layers, unlocking new capabilities. So for instance, in traditional networking, things like MPLS is a very expensive feature set, generally relegated to very expensive hardware. So what we can do is actually, with innovative software providers, we can take capabilities like that and run them on merchant silicon, drop that price points from thousands of dollars and perhaps millions of dollars for, say, 16 ports of 100 gig down to $30,000 price points. But more importantly, our solutions really, what I like to say is I could give it to you for free, but if it doesn't do any good and it sucks, then I haven't really solved anything for you. So what we try to do is actually improve your operational experience, make things easier, make things more automated, give RESTful API abstractions, and drive down economics. So a visual representation here is what we have in the compute industry. If I wanted to build, say, a big data, or if I wanted to build an OpenStack, right, I would choose my Linux distribution of choice. I'm not going out and changing hardware every time. If I wanted to build a virtualized environment or VDI, I could run VMware, and use that same basic building block. So on the networking side of the house, this is our current ecosystem of partners. Earlier in the earlier sessions, I talked about Big Switch and Cumulus. Both of those are here at the show, so I would encourage anyone in the room who's interested in seeing the solutions that we've done with them to check out their booth or come to the Dell booth. The difference between what we do here in the networking side and what we do in the compute side is that on compute, Dell just relies on our industry partners, right? Microsoft, Ubuntu, RHEL. But on the networking side, we actually do have an operating system that actually powers the largest MSDCs in the world. So for instance, Microsoft Azure runs our operating system. So in the network side of the house, we actually compete in that space. But I'm going to talk about private cloud for a bit. So this is the motivation of why people do this, right? And why people just aren't running everything in AWS. It's because you're still paying for those things. It's almost like leasing a car. You can get return on your investment by running things in private cloud, right? You get to redefine your IT roles. You get to reduce, the leverage that you run on AWS, right? Once things go in, it's more difficult to get them out. I've visited a customer. I had the pleasure of visiting lots of customers. I visited one last week. It was a fairly small organization. They had some Hadoop clusters, big data clusters, but it was running in Amazon. They paid $500,000 a month, and to back up the service between 2 data centers was $20,000 a month. So they were actually looking about standing something like OpenStack or private cloud to bring that data in-house to reduce that charge. I'm not going to talk about all of this. This is just numbers of motivations of how cloud is awesome, right? And another slide just to show in 13 months, you can, in 63% lower TCO, and you can actually, in 13 months, the investment that you made, recoup that. So there's a lot of motivation for private cloud. So now I'm going to talk about food. So obviously with my accent, I'm from the US. We like food, like to a fault, like a lot. And so I'm going to tie this to cloud. So everyone likes food, and everyone likes private cloud. So it's awesome, but what are the challenges? Like why is the problem? There's this thing called Pinterest fails. I don't know if you've seen them. This is actually not my wife's cook. She made some very similar, but I was banned to use them on the slide. But she tried to make something that looked nothing like it at all. And so the problem there is that you see these things and you listen to all of us vendors and all the other organizations on stage saying, hey, we did OpenStack and it was awesome, and it just seems like it all works very well. But generally, the problem that we see is we visit a lot of customers at Dell, and there's always this sort of delta between expectations and reality, where either they're not sure if their applications are going to run, they're not sure. They don't have the specific skill sets they need. They're not sure which hardware or which components of OpenStack you're going to use. It's very similar to the Pinterest fails, right? My wife sees some lovely bears in a mug. She's like, I can do that, and it comes out looking somewhat similar, but not quite, because either she doesn't have the skills, or she's missing the wrong, she doesn't have the right ingredients, or she's using the wrong mixtures, right? It's something very similar in concept. So how can we help? How can we get this awesome little cake with unicorns all over the place and actually help you, deploy a private cloud successfully? So again, I'm going to use the food analogy. So there's the self-prepared model where you would go out and you would collect everything yourself, right? You would go out to a supermarket or multiple supermarkets. You would buy milk and eggs and flour and all this stuff for your cookies. And you prepare everything. You clean it up. You're the sole proprietor and responsibility for how good this thing turns out. So if it's good, you have to own it. Like if it's bad, you, again, have to own it. And it doesn't always turn out like the pictures do. So the good thing is it's very good for people who want to slowly increase their capabilities, or if you're already a really good chef, everything that you make every time turns out perfect, or if you want to gain that experience. So in the Dell ecosystem, we have these things that are very similar to that, these self-prepared OpenStack environments, where we can go to customers and create completely modularized solutions, like where they say, this is what we want this and this and this, and they build this ecosystem for them. And we usually do this with the very skilled of the skilled, the largest players, or web hosters that have some familiarity with this. Then the next step in this, we have what we call reference architectures. And so these are solutions where we say, if you go out, it's a menu item. We say, if you go out and you get this, this, and this, and you configure everything in just this specific way, you should be able to get it up and running. And we validated that it works, but you go out and sort of build all this stuff yourself, but you're still there for the care and feeding. And if something breaks, it's on you. But we guarantee that if done properly, all of these things together will make an awesome cookie, an awesome OpenStack cloud. So this next example is sort of like meal plan. So yeah, there's Jamie Oliver. Like he's like super famous over in the U.S. So I'm assuming he's like really famous over on this side. This is more like carefully planned portions. So he has a service called HelloFresh, which they send you these like box dinners, and it's all carefully proportioned. They say all this stuff goes perfectly together. We know that we've got everything measured out correctly. It shows up as a single package, and you prepare the meal. So this is really good because you get all the components together in one box, and there's some assembly required. It may be a little bit messy, but it's an easier barrier to entry. You don't have to go out and acquire everything. It shows up for you. You get to gain some experience of it. You know that it works. It shows up as an engineered solution, right? This food box does. So on the Dell side, with our partnerships with Red Hat, we also have this very similar thing. So it's called Engineered Solutions for Enterprise Cloud. And what this is, it's fully tested, vetted, valid, highly supported, 5.9 reliability sort of thing. And it scales. There's different sizes of this, anywhere from 50 to 2,500 VMs. And it's a very streamlined support. It shows up as an engineered solution. And on top of that engineered solution, you can also get our professional services. So, everything from Red Hat professional services to Dell professional services, collaborative efforts, whatever it is. So it's almost like having Jamie Oliver standing over you. So you're getting everything from him, and then he's also guiding you to make sure that it's a successful meal. So, again, you're still responsible for the care and feeding and the building of the cookie, the making of the cookie. So the next one is a personal chef, where you just bring somebody in and you say, I want this, and they, like this guy, they know what they're doing, they prepare the meal, they clean it up, you just consume the product, right? You just make the food. You tell him what you want, and then he makes it, and it's awesome, and then you eat it. So the downside here is you surrender control a little bit, right? You're no longer the one making the thing, you're just consuming the product. But it's a very different model. It's one where you're more cared with the consumption versus the actual building. So in this case, this is something very, very new. I would say everyone in this room may be some of the first people to see this. This is an offering we're just now starting. And this is with a company, two companies actually, one called Platform 9, and one is a SDN controller solution from Midakura. And so what this is this is in OpenStack, a SaaS-based control plane of OpenStack lives in the cloud, but all the data, all the servers, compute, and everything lives on premise. And so what this means is you get to leverage OpenStack, and you get to leverage your in-house infrastructure, but all the things that make OpenStack complicated and generally break, you seed to Platform 9. And on the networking side of the house, you get this really rich capabilities from a network from Midakura. And so, as an example, we stood up 300 nodes in about 10 minutes, that fast. So from 0 to OpenStack in 10 minutes. And so the nice thing is that you get to find out really, really quickly if it's going to work, right? It's a fast-fail mentality. So you can easily get some infrastructure, stand it up, spin it up, see if your apps work, and you start getting your customers, your tenants comfortable with it. You give them portals. It has multiple cloud options, so you can actually manage multiple data centers or multiple cloud facilities through the same thing. And Platform 9, so there's a single belly button. It's completely zero-touch provisioning. If you want to add new resources, it's done in minutes. It's all driven by a GUI, and you stand it up. So from the network side of the house, there's lots of challenges around Neutron, and that's where Midakura comes into play. So they do things like distributed layer 3, leveraging hardware, gateways, so that you can get full capability of like 40 gig and 100 gig instead of just bound by what you can process in the compute side. It integrates things like Docker and Kubernetes for containers, and it's a single overlay. So the value of this is not only are we providing this sort of personal chef offering, but we're also, the real value here is in addition to that, it's what I use, fiercely aggressive pricing. It is very aggressive pricing. It's a fixed price. It's about 80% less than what you could get on if you were to break these all apart and a la carte them. So if you were to go to each one of us independently, the price structure would be completely different. So this is, again, one of the values of Dell and Dell Technologies. We're bringing in, simplifying the procurement process, making it easier for the customer, and driving down the price and the value. So some examples, I talked about this use case earlier, so this is some examples that we've done with our customers to show how we can scale and deliver OpenStack. So this is the largest, this was announced at OpenStack Austin a couple months ago. So this is the largest NFV OpenStack deployment on Earth. It is currently today, it is all of Verizon's service providers' 5 data centers. It's going out to their colos, their NEBS deployments, so for things like central offices, everywhere that Verizon is trying to deploy NFV solutions, we're deploying it. We also have another deployment, and so in this case, to tie it back to the networking, we're running Big Switch as an operating system that takes over for the Neutron, so that on the networking side of the house, your physical and virtual workloads are managed through a single controller, and so you can get this really awesome experience of being able to map physical and virtual through one common interface. So that reduces operational complexity. When things break, you can troubleshoot it easily, and it's zero-touch automatic configuration. We also have another deployment with Verizon that I talked about earlier that's on Cumulus, is an operating system which had a presentation earlier, which is Linux in the data center, and that's used for their video dissemination. This is some other ones. I don't want to talk about each and every one of these, but really the point here is to say that, and actually each one of these customers were very different. One used different networking plugins as southbound. One of them used Ceph, but they're all of different sizes. We have everything from oil and gas to academia, service providers, largest service providers in the world, to small hosting, and just normal mom and, I would say smaller mid-market customers. So the benefit is we have lots of options. There was actually a few more that I didn't talk about, but they're more in lines with things like VMware VIO, or even something like the EMC. Since I didn't have them in the slide because I made these slides before the acquisition and before Dell became Dell Technologies. And so there's actually a few more products and platforms that we can actually guide customers down to the beauty of it is it's not one size fits all. It's not I'm trying to push my view of how you should run OpenStack. Dell has a wide breadth of portfolio now. So it's really sitting down, understanding what your use case is, what your applications, your business, and guiding you to the proper solution. But it's very open and interoperable. Everything is modular. It allows competition at every layer. And then again, we want it to scale, but we want it to be user-friendly. So reduce your total cost of value. So whether it's both OpEx and CapEx, we want to address both, just not make everything cheap and suck, or expensive and suck still. So we want to make sure that it's a very good experience, and that it's a successful partnership for every customer that we work with. This is an eye candy slide. I believe all these slides will be disseminated. But what this is it's sort of a glimpse at our ecosystem, and this is just a piece of the ecosystem. So everything from our NFV, so network function virtualizations, things like virtualized firewalls, virtualized routers, virtualized load balancers that you can deploy inside your tenants' environments, all the way to the other cloud offerings, everything within OpenStack, our partnerships with Red Hat, and all the automations on the side. And that's it. So I'll just open it up for any questions if anyone has any questions. Once? No? All right. Thanks everyone for coming. All right. Thanks.